In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls? Start saving thousands in interest and fees and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network here at WNJC 1360 and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio. We are everywhere. We are everywhere. Well, I'm very pleased to make this announcement that we have a new Conservative Commando with us. And actually, he's not a new voice to our program. If you're a listener to our show, this gentleman has been a guest many, many times. And I love to bring in our former guests to be new Conservative Commandos. But Dana Allen is the leader of a new television network, the American Uncensored News Network. Dana was the co-founder and chairman of Newsmax.com, and he was the president of American Investigator Television. And Dana Allen, I want to welcome you to the Conservative Commandos as a co-host.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Well, we are honored that you chose to throw your lot with us, and your expertise in the media, in the world of media, will certainly go a long way to help what we do here on Conservative Commandos. AUN TV, you know, one of your new ventures, and Newsmax, your experience at Newsmax and American Investigator Television. We are honored and pleased that you are joining us here on Conservative Commandos.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind, Rick.
So, Dana, let's start out today like we usually start out every day here on the Conservative Commandos. What's on your radar screen? What do you have posted up on American Uncensored News Network?
Well, a couple of things that aren't in your general news. One is, I have currently up as our lead story at AUN-TV.com, which is in Chicago, which we all know about the terrible problems there with child murders and crime in general. The people murdering the children there are the drug gangs, mm-hmm. and they hold tryouts for politicians in Chicago. And the Democrat politicians go along with it. This would be people going for city council, aldermen, mayor, whatever. They go before a panel of the leaders of the drug gangs and tell the drug gangs what they're going to do for them.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
They go before the drug gangs and tell the drug gangs what they're going to do. You talk about the inmates running the asylum, Dana. I mean, what kind of promises are they making to these guys?
Well, obviously, they want to get their support, so obviously they have to tell them things that they're going to do that the drug gangs want.
Such as?
Well, it could be maybe lax law enforcement. Ask yourself, the drug gangs say, okay, you come before us, and they might be before panel 5 or whatever, and tell us why we should support you.
Oh my
now,
God.
Part of it could be drug gangs don't tend to be on the conservative side. So, in fact, I've never heard of such a thing as a conservative drug gang. It'd probably be some of the standard liberal policies are appealing to them. But if someone came before them and said, all these child murders being done by the drug gangs, this is just, outrageous. We have to put an end to it. I'm going to double the police presence in these neighborhoods where the children are being murdered. Do you think that they would get their support?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
It's been done a little bit behind the scenes because there's part of the movie that I just recently put out, Who Wins or America Loses, and we'll spill the beans on this, Rick, is that the evil entity in this movie is the Democratic Party. There's been partnerships between the Democratic Party and gangsters that have gone on for over 150 years. It goes back to the Dead Rabbits in Tammany Hall in New York City. And there's Prendergast and Harry Truman in Kansas City. And these are, just not corrupt city governments. These are, mass murdering gangsters. And so in the past, it was sort of a little bit under the covers, let's say. But in Chicago, it's right out in the open. And, I put this on our site, but it was in one of the big Chicago newspapers. The reporter went out and interviewed people about this practice.
Well, Dana, if there's anarchy in any part of America right now, it's happening in places like Chicago.
Yeah.
And to think that these politicians are now going out and seeking the support of these gangs. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
The next thing, Dana, thing is these gang leaders are going to be the ones out seeking votes. These gang leaders eventually will be the ones in control of the cities.
Yep.
Holy mackerel. Now, we will be talking about your movie in the next segment after the bottom of the hour. But this is just unbelievable. I'd like to see if any of these meetings are videotaped or recorded. I'd love to know.
Wonderful. We need to get our favorite undercover reporter. His name is skipping me right now. The fellow that's been
James O'Keefe. It's either James O'Keefe or Jonathan Mosley.
It's James O'Keefe. And yeah, absolutely, he needs to go into one of those meetings and pretend to and say, "Hey, I'll make sure I do all this for you," or be on the other side, set up a fake meeting where he's pretending to be a gangster. But the guy how this came about, it wasn't the idea of the gangsters; it was the idea of the politicians. There's a guy named Hal Baskin, and he used to be, a drug dealer or whatever, and he has gone straight, so he's actually trying to help children. But, of course, he has all his connections to the drug gangs because he used to be in them. So he had politicians call him up and say, what do I have to do to get the support of the drug gangs? And so he introduced the drug gang leaders.
How about going to him and say, what can we do to stop the drug gangs, to eliminate them?
That's right.
Next thing, Dana, these drug gangs have a lot of money. I mean, you hear about it every day. The amount of money that go through these drug and street and motorcycle gangs because of drugs. Next, they're going to go to these drug gangs for donations to run their campaigns.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure money was part of it. And you actually predicted something that's happened, Rick. You said, these guys will start running themselves. Well, Baskin, who isn't a drug dealer now, used to be, he isn't. He actually, has run for the 16th Ward alderman position. So the connection, it's just like in the old days where, the Chicago gang has been tied since the 1930s to the Democratic Party. In the 1920s, they had a Republican mayor named Thompson who was, an ally of Al Capone. But that's the exception. That's very much the exception to the rule. And then for the last 80 years, it's been, I guess longer than 80 years, for the last 90 years, it's been pretty much pure Democrat gangster partnership in Chicago.
I don't know what to say, Dana. You've left me. You seriously, my friend, you've really left me nearly speechless on the stupidity of what's going on in the country today. Hey, Dana, we are up against the first break of your reign as a conservative commando here, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen. And yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Today's show is being brought to you by the First Amendment and protected by the Second. Don't go away, Dana and I will be right back.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen. CEO and president of American Uncensored News Network, and the deplorable one, yours truly, Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or noontime, log on to roarradio.net, or at 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com, or you could hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. You don't need an app. You don't need to download anything. You don't need a radio. You don't need a computer. You just need a telephone. And this number, 832-999-1199. Dana, we have a couple of great guests lined up for our listeners today. Joining us at 4:05 is Fred Lucas. He is the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. He's also the unofficial White House correspondent for the Conservative Commandos radio show. He is also the author of the new book, Tainted by Suspicion, The Secret Deals and Electoral Chaos of Disputed Presidential Elections, which is a #1 Amazon bestseller as we speak. But we're going to be talking to Fred today about gun control measure divides California's politicians and law enforcement officers. So, Dana, who are you going to be speaking with at 4:35?
Someone I greatly admire, Foster Fries, who is renowned as a conservative contributor to various causes, both political and social causes. He's also an extremely successful investor, professional investor, and his record's better than Warren Buffett's at that. And I had the pleasure of meeting him at CPAC 2 years ago.
Okay, so we had a couple of great guests, and also we have a third great guest, and that guest is you, Dana. I'm going to be interviewing you about your new movie, Who Wins When America Loses. And I think I've watched it a couple of times. I think this is a must-see movie, especially before this November election. Next week, as a matter of fact, a week from today. But so we'll be talking about that a little further. So, Dana, what else is on your radar screen?
Well, we were talking about how the drug gangs in Chicago interview politicians that seek their support. They actually want the drug gangs to support them. And, a little bit more information on that is that, they give them like hour-long interviews, just as if someone was applying for a job. The gang leaders will interview a politician for an hour, and then they might do 5 in a row. And so these interviews last for 5 hours, just like job interviews. And the people that are involved in this, the gangs, it's, very famous gangs. It's the Vice Lords, the Gangster Disciples, the Black Disciples, the Cobras, the Black Pea Stones, and the Black Gangsters. Those are the name of the major gang that operate in Chicago.
This is giving these gangs credibility. It's justifying their existence. It reminds me of what a lot of motorcycle gangs do, or what the mafia used to do when it was in prominence. Before a holiday, they'll have a toy collection drive or a Christmas party or something. And it's just justifying gang existence. My God, these politicians should be talking about how they're going to break up the gangs.
Exactly. In Baltimore, after the riots, the city officially brought in, the gangs because they thought the gangs could help them, reduce violence or whatever. I mean, that's insane. That they're the source of the violence. And I was born in San Francisco, and this goes back to the days when Willie Brown was the mayor of San Francisco. But to improve security on the city buses, Willie Brown partnered with the gangs, so there'd be like a gang member on the buses. Sort of like the Guardian Angels, but it'd be more like the Guardian Devils.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Talking about that area, wasn't it in California, wasn't it in San Francisco, where Hell's Angels were hired to be security for concert, maybe a Rolling Stones concert, and it turned out to be a riot.
You're right. You have a good memory, Rick. That's the Altamont Pass, which is about 30 miles east, is where the Rolling Stones had a concert, and they hired the Hells Angels to do security.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Someone was killed.
Killed.
Yeah, someone jumped the fence or whatever to go in, and the Hells Angels beat them up, and like you say, a riot ensued, and it makes about as much sense to have the Hells Angels as security as it does to have the gangs do security on city buses in San Francisco. And just as an aside, is that Sonny Barger was the head of the Hells Angels, and I have a friend of mine who I got my season tickets to the 49ers was the foreman of the jury that put him into prison. So he fortunately nothing ever happened to him. But I had great admiration for this gentleman. Just think how much guts it took for a jury to convict him.
I'm telling you, it's a solid idea. Well, here we are a week out from the election. Probably one of the, in my opinion, one of the pivotal elections of our day and age. And the polls are coming out now. The polls, since it was brought to light that the FBI is reinvestigating, or it's going to reopen its investigation to the to the Hillary Clinton email scandals. And the ABC Washington Post tracking poll has Trump up by 1. The LA Times USC tracking poll has Trump up by 4. Rasmussen has them tied, so certainly Donald Trump has picked up a couple of points in the past few days since this email scandal, Dana. And in a minute or so we have left before we go to a break. Your thoughts on the goings-on in Washington over the past week or so?
Sure. About 5 or 6 weeks ago, they were saying that the election was over. Mm-hmm. And this is a strange election. The press mischaracterizes and say things are, this is most divisive one ever. I've heard that every single election. It's not true at all. They're about equally divisive. But this is the most unusual election I've ever seen. And in certain cases with Trump, I think it's like that movie, The Producers, with Springtime for Hitler.
Yeah, really.
He's gotten away with things that no one has ever gotten away with before. It's almost as if he's trying to lose the election, but Hillary, such a horrible candidate, and has all this baggage, it doesn't make any difference. And so I think there's a very distinct chance that Trump will win the election.
Well, here you go with another scenario. To me, it's a nightmare scenario. Hillary wins, she's indicted, she's impeached, and we get the crazy clown Tim Kaine as president.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a scary thought? You talk about scary clowns, Dana. My gosh, I don't even want to think about that potential nightmare.
That's right. And then who will he select if that happens? Who will he select his vice president? So I think, in that situation, it's, very crucial in the Senate and the congressional elections. So if there's people out there, let's say that are offended by some of the things that Trump has done, that's fine. Make sure, if you're one of those people, make sure that whoever's in there there's checks on that person, and make sure you don't stay home. Make sure you elect people that you believe in for all the other races.
All right. And with that, break time. Once again, you are listening to Conservative Commando's radio show with Dana Allen, CEO and President of American Uncensored News Network, and the deplorable one, the benevolent dictator, Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commando's radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM, 24/7. Avoid disappointment and future regret. Don't go away, Dana and I'll be right back. This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
I'm Pastor Christina Lamanier. I'm a concerned mother and grandmother, and I urge you to vote for Donald Trump. Our Commander-in-Chief's highest priority is to secure the safety and freedom of Americans of every race, creed, and color. Trump will solve the ISIS crisis quickly and utilize the talents of people like Mayor Rudy Giuliani to restore law and order in our streets. Donald Trump will build the wall, secure our borders, and bring back jobs and prosperity to America by slashing taxes, cutting government waste, stamping out political correctness, harnessing our abundant natural resources, unleashing the patriotism and genius of we the people. Always remember, there is a special place in heaven for followers of Jesus Christ.
For more information, log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRA Super PAC paid for this ad and is solely responsible for its content, not authorized by any candidate or its committee.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, fellow patriots, fellow deplorables. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. Or at noontime, log on to roarradio.net or at 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com. Or you can hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Try it right now. You don't need a computer, you don't need a radio, you don't need anything, you don't need to download anything, you don't need an app, you just need this telephone number, 832-999-1199. Dana Allen is our newest co-host here on the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. He's also the leader of a new television network, American Uncensored News Network, and Dana was the co-founder and chairman of Newsmax.com, and also the president of American Investigator Television. And Dana has just finished producing a new documentary, a film that I think everyone needs to see, especially before they go to vote next week or vote at any time. It's Who Wins When America Loses? And Dana Allen, I want to talk with you about your documentary again. We talk some, but you know, Dana, there was just so much information in your documentary. The last time we talked about 2 weeks ago about it, we only got through about half of it. And you know, in your documentary, you talk about the evil entity. And could you start out this week's conversation, Dana, by telling us how this evil entity got started? How it was created?
Well, it was originally created to perpetuate human slavery. That was its primary purpose. And there were, at the same time, there were abolitionist organizations. And this is possibly in the history of the world, there's never been a more powerful force to try to perpetuate human slavery than the evil entity. And that's where it got its money from, and it was, very strong to do this. It is also involved in ethnic cleansing, the Cherokee Trail of Tears. They sought support by, stealing the farms of Cherokees and then holding the lotteries for people to win the farms that they stole from the Cherokees. and they did this to gain political support. We will reveal who the evil entity is, and so I'd like the listeners to think, who could it be that, what organization could possibly do this? It's a real organization with a name and an address. The organization also is the most deadly enemy of the United States Army. The second most deadly enemy is Hitler and the Nazis that killed about 140,000 American soldiers. This organization actually is responsible for killing several times that. This organization also is the racist lynchings, which was a terrible problem in America. It was like about 6,000 lynchings, and about 4,500 of those were of black people, mostly for racist reasons. Often they were guilty of no crime. It was like during sharecropper days, when it was time to pay the sharecropper, they would lynch them instead of pay him. So one of the worst abuses ever. Where that happened was because there's local protection, legal protection for the lynchers, and they were encouraged by the evil entity to do these lynchings to keep black people in a state of terror. They also lynched about 1,500 white people. Very often it was because they were trying to protect the black people that are being oppressed by this organization. This lasted in the 1950s, from the 1860s to the 1950s. There was a direct correlation to what percentage of the people believed in the evil entity within a county or within a state, and how many lynchings there were. Where the evil entity was very unpopular, there's virtually no lynchings at all. Where the evil entity was popular, there's hundreds, even thousands over a long period of time of lynchings. This group also, from the very beginning, they had a dual birth, and it was human slavery, perpetuating that. And the other thing was, it was partnering with gangsters in inner cities, with immigrants or whatever, to gain political control. People have heard about things like, the dead rabbits, and a lot of movies made about it, big Hollywood movies about it. That was another major source for this. And the last thing is, and we have talked about this, Rick, is that this organization, where they win is where America loses the most, hence the title of the movie. So the most destroyed city in the United States is Detroit. Detroit is the greatest victory, the most beneficial city in the United States for the evil entity. The greatest failure for the evil entity is Provo, Utah. And in Provo, Utah is the opposite of Detroit. It's very safe. It has a murder rate of 1 as opposed to 46 in Detroit. It has the best job market in the United States, whereas Detroit has the worst job market in the United States. In 2010 census, over 24% unemployment. So the question is, who is the evil entity?
Well, I don't want you to answer that yet.
Okay, I will not.
I don't want you to answer that yet, because I have some questions about this evil entity. And again, I consider myself somebody who is a student of history. I love history. I think of myself as a student of current events, but a lot of the information that you divulge in your movie, Who Wins When America Loses, I was not totally aware of. Dana, you opened up a whole bunch of cans of worms here, and maybe we'll have to take a break in about a minute, but maybe after the break we can go back and talk about some of these worms. When you talk about slavery, when you talk about the gangs and the connection to this evil entity. But, one thing that I wanted to pose to you now, and again, we'll talk about it when we come back, that many believe that slavery ended in this country with a civil war in 1865. But in your film, you refer to something called slavery by another name. And when we come back from that, I want to start out there and get you to talk about what is meant by that. And are we to believe, or you want us to believe, in what proof that you have that slavery actually continued in the United States after the Civil War? But for right now, we are going to take a break, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen, President and CEO of American Uncensored News Network. And yours truly, Rick Trader, and we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network at WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. We're discussing Dana's new movie, Who Wins When America Loses. Powerful, powerful movie. Everyone needs to see it. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Dana Allen, President and CEO of American Uncensored News Network, and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or noontime log on to roarradio.net. At 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com, or you could hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Dana, we are discussing your movie, just released movie, Who Wins When America Loses. And we've been talking about this evil entity that is full of political corruption, promoting slavery, involvement with gangs. And, before we went on a break, I said that many believe that slavery ended with the Civil War in 1865. And in your film, you refer to something called slavery by another name. And what did you mean by that? And are we to believe that slavery continued past the Civil War?
Yes, this was, and you mentioned you were not aware of this, Rick. I was not either. It was through the research of this. We had the basic concept, who wins when America loses. We're looking for conflicts of interest, and that got us into, a lot of things. And that's how I found out about this. We researched it deeply. And yes, slavery did continue past World War II. On a massive scale, after the Civil War, on a massive scale. Mm-hmm. In fact, it legally existed into the 1930s.
Well, how was that? How did it exist? Because Lincoln freed the slaves. You remember the Emancipation Proclamation? Yep. All that?
That actually did happen, and for about 10 years, 5 to 10 years, slavery was ended. But then it reappeared, and it reappeared in areas where the evil entity was very strong. It did not appear, in other areas. Is very much tied to the evil entity. And what it was is that, and a lot of the people were ex-slaves. They were held as prisoners on plantations, because if they tried to leave the plantation owner would notify the local sheriff. The local sheriff would arrest the person for vagrancy, which is really no crime. It's just they're trying to escape to go north to New York or Chicago or wherever. And they would chain them up and sell them back to the plantation owner, and then that way the plantation owner didn't even have to pay them anything. And so then the other people that were on the plantation were afraid to try to escape, because they knew instead of getting some pay and not being in chains, they'd end up being chained up and sent back to their plantation. And that went on until the 1930s. And it was another law was written in the 1930s to outlaw this. But in spite of this, if you look into, the historical record, people were being arrested into the late 1950s for what they call peonage, slavery, that people were still doing the slavery, even though it was illegal.
Well, how did this slavery benefit the evil entity?
Multiple ways. One is money. So in some states in the United States, the majority of their state budget was paid for by selling people into slavery. Like I say, someone could be arrested for a real crime, or they could just be vagrancy. And so they would, arrest the person. They didn't have prisons. So what they would do is they would sell these people to mines, to farms, to whatever, chained up, and then they would give them permission to whip them. And another aspect to this slavery by another name is it was mostly black people, but it wasn't exclusively. So there's a case in Florida where a tourist, a teenager came down from Minnesota or whatever to check out Florida in the summer, and they arrested him for vagrancy. They sold him into this new slavery system, and he was whipped to death. And this was white.
You said they didn't have prisons, but was this basically a typical chain gang situation?
That's right. And when I heard of chain gangs, I didn't see any problem with them, because I thought it was legitimate.
I thought they were prisoners.
Exactly. Well, they are prisoners, but they may have not committed anything that we consider to be a crime. So,
I thought of, remember the movie Cool Hand Luke?
Oh, absolutely.
I thought of chain gangs as, okay, these are prisoners and they were put out on work details. Same thing, Shawshank Redemption. You saw a similar thing where these are prisoners.
I don't have a problem with that, because, why not? It's good for people to work, and they, help pay for themselves. And in Cool Hand Luke or whatever, it was sort of the government, the government was building government roads, and so forth, with their own prisoners. But how it was done, this is in the late 1800s all the way into the 1930s, and maybe a little bit past it, they're actually being sold. So they would get a prisoner, and then they go to a farm and say, we'll sell them to you for, 5 years for $500. And that was better than paying wages, so the farmer would buy them. And then they gave them the made it legal for them to whip him. So, like in the case of this white teenager from Minnesota who's whipped to death, they had a person whose job was being the whipping boss, because they thought by whipping their workers, and in this case it was on a tree harvesting plantation, they could get more work out of them. And in this case, they whipped the teenager to death. I had no idea about this, Rick, before we investigated this to do the documentary.
Danny, you also talk about that the evil entity being involved in organized crime, and you mentioned so many names in there, but a couple of names that you mentioned in there were Billy and Whitey Bulger. Now, we've heard recently about Whitey Bulger, but I didn't know a lot about Billy Bulger or their association with the evil entity.
Yes. Yes, and I'd like to give some credit to someone that you probably know, Howie Carr exposed a lot of this. The talk radio host up in Boston, and he was totally aware of this problem and got death threats over or whatever. But yes, Whitey Bulger's maybe the most notorious gangster of the recent times, and he just got put back into prison after. Mm-hmm. They tried to capture him for years. And his brother was Billy Bulger, who's the most powerful state-level politician in Massachusetts. So he was the head of the Massachusetts Senate. And he would, in our film, we show him with, the most famous politicians of our time seeking favor.
And I can imagine in Massachusetts who they are. The Ted Kennedys, the Jack Kennedys, the Bobby Kennedys.
Michael Dukakis, and absolutely. And so here, and this was a partnership, and how this worked was, and this is what happened in a lot of other cities, is that Willie Bulger, the mass murderer, he would protect his brother. So when Billy Bulger would take bribes, and so when the police were getting, or the FBI was getting close to arresting him for that, Whitey Bulger had an FBI agent on his payroll who's now in prison because he was on his payroll, and he would tell police, no, you back off. Don't investigate Billy Bulger over these bribery things. When the police would get close to arresting Whitey Bulger for murder, Billy Bulger, being the head of the budget for the state, would, actually fire departments or whatever, cut people's pays, reassign them to terrible work or whatever to prevent the police from completing their investigations that would have put Whitey Bulger in prison decades ago before, he murdered all the additional people that he murdered. And yes.
Incredible.
And these are two brothers. The movie that just came out called Black Mass covers some of this, but it avoids the evil entity connection. It just says, his brother's a big shot politician, and doesn't point out the fact that they were in partnership with each other.
Dana, we only have about 2 or 3 minutes to go. There's so many points I'd like to get into, but I think one of the scariest points that you made in the movie going forward in our lives is, how are the schools aiding this evil entity?
Yes, propaganda, and I experienced it. I grew up in California and went to public schools, and it was really quite strong, and now it looks like it's even worse. Children are being required to sing worship songs to members of the evil entity. All the policies or whatever are things that they repeat, and this is all video footage that's inside the movie that shows this going on, and it's generally estimated that this gains 20 to 30% support, belief in the evil entity in the United States because of all the school indoctrination.
Well, that's scary. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dana.
Oh, there's just one more thing is that when children become illiterate, and in the case of Detroit, the greatest success for the evil entity, 50% of the people, adults and children in Detroit, are illiterate today. That greatly benefits the evil entity. They have 98% support in Detroit, whereas in a literate city, let's say like Provo, they have 12% support.
Dana, do you think it's time that we expose this evil entity? Because when you talk about in schools, they're singing songs praising this evil entity, it reminds me of things that I saw going back to the 1930s. Children in schools singing songs about Adolf Hitler. Who is this evil entity, and who are our schools indoctrinating our children to praise and to honor?
Sure. The folks out there listening, keep an open mind. We all preconditioned to believe in moral equivalency, and the Soviets pulled the same thing. So be open-minded, look at all the evidence in the movie, but the evil entity is the Democratic Party. And just go back to all those things from America's most deadly military enemy. It was the Democrats that attacked the United States because they're trying to perpetuate slavery, and that killed about 300,000 U.S. Army soldiers.
And that was during the Civil War.
That's right, the Civil War. Mm-hmm. Civil War, which is really the Democrats' war against America. The Cherokee Trail of Tears was a campaign promise of theirs. They campaigned on that. Ethnic cleansing, human slavery was their signature issue. The drug gangs today and the gangs going back to the 1800s, almost every one of them was tied to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party actually sought their help. And this, like Prendergast and Truman in Kansas City were in a partnership, and Prendergast murdered all sorts of people. And so I really implore everyone listening, you're not supposed to find out what's in this movie. And once you do, you'll have a different thing. I know people that believe in the Democratic Party who are over 60 years old that have lost their belief in the Democratic Party after they watch this movie.
And Dana, how can people watch this movie?
It's available on several sites. You can go to very simple whowin'smovie.com, and then that directs you to Vimeo. And if people just want to go directly to Vimeo, it's Vimeo On Demand Who Wins. And if you just say "Who Wins When America Loses" movie, you'll find, Google will also direct you to these sites.
We'll also put links to it up on our Conservative Commandos Facebook group page, and also on our website, www.ccrshow.com. Hey, Dana, I want to thank you so much for producing this great documentary. It was an education to me, believe me, and it will be an education to anybody who watches it. But you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen, President and CEO of the American Uncensored News Network, and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. On the other side, we're going to be speaking with Fred Lucas, White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, about gun control measures divide California's politicians and law enforcement. Don't go away, but we will be right back with Fred Lucas.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity, since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen, President and CEO of American Uncensored News Network. And I'm Rick Trader, producer of kind of another form of uncensored news network, the Conservative Commandos radio show. And if you'd like to hear our rebroadcast, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or noontime, log on to roarradio.net, 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Our next guest, Fred Lucas, is the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal and the unofficial White House correspondent for the Conservative Commandos radio show. And before joining the Daily Signal, Fred worked at The Blaze and also CNSnews.com. Fred is the author of The Right Frequency, the story of the talk giants who shook up the political and media establishment, and his latest book, Tainted by Suspicion, The Secret Deals and Electoral Chaos of Disputed Presidential Elections, is an Amazon bestseller. Fred Lucas, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. And Fred, congratulations on the great success of Tainted by Suspicion.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, great to have you with us. Fred, we've asked you to join us today to discuss an article that you have on the Daily Signal. Gun control measure divides California's politicians and law enforcement. And you start out your article. A gun control measure on California's ballot November 8th is pitting sheriffs, police chiefs, and prosecutors against most of the state's political establishment. What's going on here, Fred?
Well, in California, which already has very, very, very strict gun control laws, and some of these were actually even supported by some of these law enforcement groups in the past. So it's not as if the law enforcement groups are consistent Second Amendment supporters. But this particular law is being pushed by Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. It's a ballot measure that would require background checks for anybody buying ammunition and require a license for anybody selling ammunition. This is basically a way that after the U.S. Supreme Court has determined that you can't restrict people from owning guns, that there is an individual right, this is a way basically for California to try to keep people from using the guns that they can legally own. And of course, the argument here has always been that criminals will probably find a way to buy ammunition, even if it is illegal.
So, Fred, California has a long border, as you probably know. Borders Nevada, I think Utah, Oregon. I'm thinking people, to avoid this, and as you say, criminals will find a way to get ammunition. California is not an island guarded by sharks and alligators. People.
I mean, sometimes the policies pushed by the Democratic legislature there, and would indicate that they think so. But this, by the way, is something Gavin Newsom is pushing very hard. Mm-hmm. One who is the face of this movement. He's out campaigning for it this year and so forth. Who we're not seeing getting behind this is Governor Jerry Brown. He's pretty much being sort of silent on this. Mm-hmm. However, a couple of years back, he vetoed a bill from the legislature that would have done part of what this bill, what this measure would also require, and that is anyone who has a gun that's stolen, they would be required by law to immediately report that. Jerry Brown vetoed that bill because he said that responsible gun owners are already going to report a stolen gun. Irresponsible people won't, and also that some people may not even be aware that a gun was stolen, and then you're criminalizing people that were that were actually a victim of a crime in some sense. But this is something that Gavin Newsom, nonetheless, is pushing for that. That's the other side of this. Basically, outlawing ammunition, but also outlawing people who were victims of a crime and having a gun stolen.
Gavin Newsom, is he running for governor?
He is. He's going to be running in 2018.
Yeah. So do you think...
From what I've seen there's already some infrastructure set up there for his campaign.
Yeah, so do you think this is a ploy to just get his name out in the media right now? You know,
it certainly allows him to be part of a 2016 campaign as a face of this movement, and also allows him to probably certainly curry favor with the left-wing base of the party, maybe to fend off any primary challengers that might come his way in 2018. California is so dominant Democratic now that I think that more than likely whoever wins the primary going down the road will be the governor. So I think where you're looking at with Newsom is he probably wants to move as far left as possible to stave off any primary challenge because he knows he can win general as long as he's nominee.
Well, Fred, as you have in your title, gun control measures divide California's politicians and law enforcement officers. What's law enforcement? What's their side in this?
Well, law enforcement basically are the police chiefs, California Police Chiefs Association opposes this. They think it's just going to penalize legal gun owners, law-abiding gun owners. The president of the California Sheriff's Association, who I interviewed for this story, thinks it's just basically going to be a penalty for various people. They think that the state is moving against the Second Amendment on numerous fronts, and they've seen that chipped away at. The president of the Sheriff's Association that I talked to said that he had a gun stolen out of his vehicle a few years back. He didn't know it was stolen for days because, that's the only person not necessarily going to be checking on anything that they have in their vehicle every single day. And then, but had this law been in place, when he could have been arrested for not reporting that immediately.
Wow. You know, in your article, Fred, you talk about the supporters of this gun measure movement, including Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, the California Secretary of State, the Senate President, two of the largest newspapers, the LA Times and the San Francisco Chronicle, the Sacramento Bee, and among those that are lined up against them, I can't read this list of law enforcement organizations that are against this thing.
Right. The district attorneys, I guess that's what being the prosecutors, they're saying this is not something that's even workable. A big thing, another thing beyond the Second Amendment issues, police are worried that this is going to drag police off the street chasing after silly crimes, people that didn't report guns or people that are supposed to be trying to arrest people that are selling bullets when this is something they could be doing other things. They could actually be going after real criminals. And this is just draining law enforcement's resources. And that's a practical concern for a lot of people.
Well, Fred, you mentioned earlier in the interview or you insinuated or you made it explicit that this was a way for liberal politicians to get around the Supreme Court ruling that people have a right to own a weapon. So they figure, well, you can own the weapon, but if you don't have any ammunition to shoot in it, guess what? It's null and void. So, what's the feelings of the general public, Fred? What's your feeling about this and your research investigation?
The last poll that was taken on this, and keep in mind, California doesn't necessarily represent the mainstream America. So the last poll that was taken on this, it was looking pretty positive for the measure to pass. It was It was, I think, even 93% of Democrats were backing it, and 60% of Republicans were even backing it.
What is in that water out there, Fred?
That's actually pretty surprising. I don't even think you would find that in some of the blue states like New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York. I don't think you would have the numbers like that. So this will be something to watch. Either that poll was just way off, which is entirely possible. I mean, we occasionally do see polls that are very far off from the actual result, or this thing will pass.
Speaking of the poll, Fred, you know who took the poll and what measures they used? See, because, you know, Fred, I'll be honest with you, I'm very dubious of the polls.
California Counts was the polling firm.
I'm sorry?
California Counts is the name of the polling firm.
California Counts.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about them, Fred? Are they liberal-leaning?
No, I don't know a lot about them. It's a state-based polling firm, so not as if Gallup or Rasmussen came in to poll this issue, but maybe they should actually. I think this the results. I mean, there's reason to question these results. They are lopsided. Even if you think it's going to pass, I think there's reason to question such lopsided results as this. I mean, say 60% of Republicans will support it.
Right, because a lot of times, you know, in these polls, Fred, you're right. It's how these polls are worded. You know. And from them, they skew the results to make it, you know, like, okay, 93% of Democrats and 60% of, I could see 93% of California Democrats favoring a liberal proposition, but 60% of Republicans, you know, my gosh, I find that a little hard to believe.
Well, even in a state where Arnold Schwarzenegger qualifies as a Republican.
Well, there you go. It's a little
hard to believe.
Hey, Fred, we got to take a break. Could you hold on for just 2 minutes for us, please? Because and I want you to stay. We got more to talk to you about this. I also want to bring in Dana Allen into the conversation. But you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Our guest this segment is Fred Lucas, CC White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, and also the official, unofficial White House correspondent for the Conservative Commandos. We're talking about gun control measure divides California politicians and law enforcement officers. We'll be right back with Fred.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity, since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. Noontime, log on to roarradio.net, 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day by calling 832-999-1199. Our guest this segment is Fred Lucas. He's the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, and we're discussing his article, Gun Control Measures Divide California Politicians and Law Enforcement Officers. Fred, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks.
Fred, this Proposition 63, this ammunition proposal, interestingly, you point out the proposal would allow authorities to confiscate magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, but this is something Californians are already prohibited from buying.
Yeah. That's something. I mean, they're basically cracking down more, and it would basically go a step beyond what they're already prohibited from buying, and go into actually owning, which might be how they want to get around people crossing in the border states and buying ammunition, which and that again, I think circles even back to the point. That's not what police want to be doing.
Yeah, Fred
most police don't want to go into people's house and take their bullets that these people aren't really using their bullets for. Most police want to actually be involved in keeping people safe from dangerous people.
Fred, do you know if there's been any surge in sales of ammunition in California?
I have not seen those numbers, but I would be surprised if there weren't. Okay. I mean, we've seen every time Barack Obama talks about gun control, there's always a surge in gun sales and ammunition and so forth. So in fact, there's a joke that Barack Obama has been the greatest pitch man for the gun industry.
No, I don't think that's a joke. I think that's a fact. Here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, we are speaking with Fred Lucas, White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. Hey, Fred, on the other line, I do have Dana Allen, and I know Dana wants to get in this conversation. Dana?
Yes. Hi, Fred. Good to talk to you. Something just come up, a very big story, in the Donna Brazile thing, where she has been fired now by CNN because she was feeding questions to Hillary Clinton before a debate, And that reminded me of something that happened 2 years ago where, and you being a White House correspondent, you're probably aware of this, where the top reporter for the CBS station, Phoenix, Arizona, came back and was part of the conference, and then she went back and did a report. In her report, on the air in Arizona, she said that the White House press conferences are staged and that the reporters meet with Jay Carney beforehand and they practice their questions and answers, and that created a big brouhaha. And Jay Carney said it never happened, and she, on air very fearfully says, "Oh no, I misspoke," or something like that. Are you aware of that story?
I do remember that. Yeah, she heard something along those lines, and then she had to. But yeah, I mean that's not the case. I think there are some occasionally some softball questions that almost come across that way, but there's no organized effort. There's never been that I'm aware of.
Or at least that they would allow you to be in on.
Yeah, but I would have my doubts. I mean, seeing folks like Yeah, that's not. I mean, we've seen ABC reporters that have been pretty tough with ABC reporters, Fox News reporters, in particular. I think those two networks that have been pretty tough with both the last two press secretaries.
Yeah. Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Hey, Fred. Speaking of which, a little off topic here, but I got to ask you, what's the mood going around the White House press room with the revelations about the FBI reopening Hillary's email scandal again?
Well, that is just something that came as a shock, I think, to everybody. And as much as anything, I think most people in the news, I can't say that about everybody, but most do like a good story when it comes up. And this was something that just that was a very good story, and it was an amazing revelation this quick before an election. I mean, clearly, I think Clinton campaign thought they had the upper hand with their October surprise about these old videos and so forth of Donald Trump and the parade of women making allegations from the past, and then now we have this, and people are. It does seem to be having an impact, depending on what kind of poll you see. There was a Washington Post ABC poll that shows that Clinton's lead evaporated from a 12-point lead from a week earlier to a 1-point lead, and then another poll, though, NBC poll still had Hillary up about the same. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be hard to know. And the IBD poll has it closing. The Investors Business Daily is kind of back and forth, just seesawing back and forth, about 1 point difference between them. That was the closest poll last time, 4 years ago. It was the most accurate poll.
Are the liberal reporters that you associate with there in the White House press room, are they reporting this story, or are they just trying to ignore it? I mean, it's pretty hard to ignore an elephant in the room. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It is, and I think there's enough. I think there are enough alternative media outlets right now that prevent established, sort of these legacy news outlets from ignoring a lot of the stories that they used to. And I'm talking about the Daily Signal, but talk radio that keep stories on the agenda and make it very difficult and sometimes shame some liberal-leaning outlets into covering things. I mean, even MSNBC, which doesn't even make a pretense about objectivity, you'll see covering these issues with Hillary Clinton.
Well, Fred Lucas, I, in my lifetime, have never seen a campaign or an election season like this. And if I was wanting to talk with anyone about it, it would be that guy Fred Lucas, who's written a book about presidential campaigns tainted by suspicion. Fred, has there ever been anything like this in campaigning before this type of campaign with the vitriol?
The vitriol, yes, there has been. It's probably been worse. I think this talk about how we've never been more polarized is just you don't have to go back too far. I mean, but I actually go back pretty far in the book, tainted by suspicion, and it goes back to the first election profiled as the 1800 election, and it was plenty of vitriol between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. You go through the 1876 election, the aftermath in that with the Hayes-Tilden dispute. Democrats were out saying Tilden or blood.
Wow.
And so I think there's been a little bit of talk about how there's been a lot of talk in kind of left-wing media outlets that Donald Trump would be unprecedented in an assault on democracy if he didn't automatically accept the election results on election night, because no candidate has ever done that before. So there's been quite a few candidates that haven't accepted the election results. First one being Al Gore. He didn't accept it for 36 days until he had to, and that's when the Supreme Court ruled on it.
Yeah, it's a little surprising to me that Donald Trump didn't bring up the name Al Gore too much when he was asked about will he accept the results. He should, in my opinion, he should have said something like, "Yeah, I will," just like Al Gore did. Hey, Fred, we got to run. We're running out of time, but I wanted to thank you for coming on today, and please tell our audience how they could follow your work, read your articles, buy your book.
Okay, please. That's probably the easiest way to buy the book is on Amazon.com. It's also available in Barnes & Noble. And you can check me out DailySignal.com. We actually have an excerpt published today from the book. Looks at the first October surprise. We were no shortage of October surprises this year, but the very first October surprise. So it's taken from the book, Tainted by Suspicion. Stuff on the DailySignal.com.
Fred Lucas, thanks again. You take care. God bless. Great speaking.
You too. Thanks very much.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos with Dana Allen and Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network at WNJC 1360 in Philly and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. On the other side, we're going to be speaking with Foster Fries, businessman and supporter of conservative Christian causes. Don't go away. Dana and I'll be right back with our next guest.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
Since 2011, we have been calling for a national commitment from all Americans to participate in an annual event to honor all of the victims and their families who suffered during and after the most devastating event to ever take place on American soil. We all remember those horrible scenes of destruction on September 11th, 2001 that unfolded right before our eyes, either up front or on television. We continue to ask every American to participate in the united action of prayer, which is simply to stop whatever you are doing at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or to offer a prayer to honor the memory of those who are directly affected by this unforgettable scene of destruction. Please include a prayer of thanks for living in a country where even something as horrific as 9/11 could not weaken our spirit. This year, we would like to ask one more thing as a show of unity since we are still fighting with the enemy who caused the 9/11 tragedy. Would you display the flag for the day at your home, on your car, bike, or anywhere you can display Old Glory? Let's show our enemies that we can still unite in our love for our country.
I'm Pastor Christina.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dana Allen, President and CEO of Frontiers of Freedom, and I'm Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at 11 p.m. You can log on to highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Dana Allen, we have our next guest with us, and the honor of the introduction is yours.
Thank you, and it is an honor to introduce Foster Fries. He is a businessman, a supporter of conservative Christian causes. He was named Humanitarian of the Year, following in the footsteps of Coretta Scott King, Bob Hope, President H.W. Bush. And in 2009, he received the Benefactor of the Year, Paul Weyrich Award, and I was a friend of Paul Weyrich. And in 2010, he received the Spirit of Children Award, given annually to child help supporters who have given generously of time and money to children's causes. Through his web presence at fosterfries.com and his Campfire blog, Foster works to promote the Founding Father principles of free enterprise, limited constitutional government, physical responsibility, and traditional American values. He believes we can find effective and innovative private sector solutions to many of the problems we solve. Foster, welcome back to Conservative Commandos.
Well, it's always a joy to be on the show with you guys. You do such great things to spread the good news and let people know what truth is. So I honor you for that, and it's a compliment you to invite me.
Oh, thank you. We're very honored to have you here. I understand something that is on your mind at this point is the situation in Iraq with the Kurds and whether they get armed or not. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, I was really taken back when during the debate Hillary Clinton said, "I'm for arming the Kurds," and she said also that she's for no-fly zone. So I'm scratching my head and say, she's in the administration for how many years? Why don't we have a no-fly zone? And why aren't the proper arms going to the Kurds? And is this a example of her dualistic a private message and a public message? And I'm just very distraught that the Kurds have not been able to get exactly what they need. Now, they do get some, and I just talked to my Kurdish contact yesterday, and the things from the coalition are coming on better than it was. But I went to Camp Black Tiger, the Peshmerga camp on the ISIS front lines a few months back, and the vice commander told me they don't have simple things like night goggles, so the bad guys are coming to throw grenades in the bunker. They can't see them coming. They push ISIS out of an area, and they don't have the technology to properly booby-trap it, and they're losing people to the booby-trap. So I think it's quite disconcerting to see why, with so many people in Congress and so many people for it, why it's being blocked. And it's being blocked because we have this one Iraq policy, which does not allow us to arm the Kurds too aggressively for fear they will bolt from the Iraq government and start an independence. So that's a tragedy. I think we lost a lot of people and a lot of our friends over there because of the inaction of Hillary Clinton in making this happen.
Wow, I had no idea that you'd actually gone into the Kurdish area. I'm glad that you got back safely. I guess this sort of splits into two separate things here. One is, what do you think are the motives of Hillary Clinton now saying that she's in favor of arming the Kurds? Do you think that's sincere?
Well, you of course have to ask her, but the whole thing is if she's in favor, why isn't it happening? She's in a position to make it happen. And I just believe that so many things that the administration puts out publicly really isn't happening. I know where Frank Wolf was a former congressman. He set up an envoy to help protect Christians that are persecuted in the Middle East, and Obama signed it, but then never staffed it. And so one of the things I think is important in this election, among many, is the return of the rule of law. There's a fellow named Kurt Schlichter who I've never met, but he just wrote this scathing article how he detests Donald Trump. But he said, there's no way I'm not going to vote for him because we don't have a return of law. The next administration, the Clintons, can get away with anything. There'll be no entity to call them into account, no person. And if you look what's happened to the FBI, why hasn't that wound up in an indictment? It's got everybody scratching their heads. So I think the return of the rule of law would prohibit things like, remember Eric Holder wouldn't prosecute the Black Panthers for voter intimidation? Weren't they standing at the polling booths with baseball bats? And here you have five states, including Colorado, that have approved sale of marijuana, which is against federal law. So I asked the chairman of the Republican Attorney General's Association, helped me understand the nuances of that, and it's simply because Obama has decided to look the other way. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a situation where this Congress, the House and the Senate, allows the states to make their own decisions in sale of marijuana, and it becomes a law rather than having it just a law that's violated? And how in the world do we have sanctuary cities? I mean, we just have to get back to the rule of law as one of the key things that's important in this election.
Absolutely. You know, it's been proven that where you have more rule of law, not only do you have a more just society, but there's a direct correlation to how prosperous the country is, because people in a society where there isn't the rule of law, they're afraid to invest anything because it might get stolen from them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, another issue, too, I think that is interesting in this election, that no one seems to be paying any attention to what the policies are. It's all on the nitpicking of what she did and what he said, which has some relevance, admittedly. But if we're looking forward to 4 or 5 years from now or 3 years from now, a lot of the things we're discussing in the media are going to be completely irrelevant. It's going to be old news probably in 6 months, but it won't be old news in terms of what kind of healthcare system we're going to have. I was just in London yesterday, about 48 hours ago, and on the front page, there's a huge disaster shaping up in the national health care system there. National Health System Services is just reaping all kinds of negative losses, like hundreds of millions of pounds, and they currently had 10,000 people who had to wait 6 weeks to get a diagnostic test. They had 29,000 people who spent more than 4 hours on a gurney in the emergency room waiting to be taken care of. And that's before this article appeared about they're now talking about more cutbacks. So it's unclear to me why, in heaven's name, do we want to take our private healthcare system, which is one of the finest in the world, and let it be taken over by the federal government? The Democrats and the left seem to use these wonderful sounding words like public option, the single payer system, expansion Medicare. What we're really talking about is allowing the government, the federal government, to run all of our health care like they run the 3 existing entities. Look at how they're demonstrating the accessibility as evidenced by the Phoenix, Arizona Veterans Administration. 2, everybody knows how much choice you get when you're in the military for a doctor. And 3, the third entity that the government runs is the Indian healthcare system. Now, how many 747s come from Saudi Arabia to land on the Indian reservation and get a heart valve? So it just doesn't happen. So why in the world do we allow that to happen? And I think it's important that we stave that off in this next election. So the return of the rule of law, the staving off government takeover of the health care are 2 big problems. And the third one, of course, we alluded to a little bit by talking about the Kurds, is how do we confront the global jihad movement?
Right. You know, on the Kurds, this goes back even 10 years or whatever. I've never understood it, because the Kurds have never stabbed the United States in the back. You know, they're in that area. They're the only reliable, whatever you want to call it, ally that we have. And they also treat Christians decently, and they help rescue the Christians when, they were being attacked by ISIS. Is there some, feel free if you think there's some, a hidden agenda going on as to why the Kurds are not being helped?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. And one is that the Obama administration seems to be beholden to the Shiite government in Baghdad, and the Baghdad government just is fearful of the Kurds becoming independent. And keep in mind, there's a lot of groups of Kurds. The PKK is a group in Turkey, which I understand are more leftist. And if you merge them into one nation, which a lot of people have been talking about, because there's Syrian Kurds, Iranian Kurds, Turkish Kurds, and the Kurds in Iraq, there'd be a lot of tensions among them. In fact, the Barzani family and the Talabani families in Kurdistan itself have been kind of at loggerheads, and a few years back came to kind of a peace agreement, so they're now better equipped to deal with what the issues are. But I think the Kurds first became they've, as you said, they've been fans of America for a long time. But when Colin Powell drew the line that created the no-fly zone, this protected them from Saddam Hussein. And a lot of people have said they are a second Israel. because number one, like Israel, all the people around them hate them. The Persians, the Arabs, they're surrounded by their enemies, the Turks. And secondly, they've had their Holocaust. You know, remember Saddam Hussein gassed all these villages to try to eliminate them. And also, they're good friends of America. They do care about us. And when I was there a few years back, not the most recent trip when I went to the Peshmerga camp on the lines, but a few years back, I met the fellow who's responsible for the 12,000 Christian refugees that he was protecting and making sure they had food and clothing. So I think we really are missing a boat by not creating basically a second Israel. We should have a second Israel. That would cause a lot of bad problems for the bad guys in the neighborhood.
Here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, we are speaking with Foster Friess, businessman, supporter, humanitarian supporter of conservative Christian causes. Foster, you know, when you talk about rescuing Christians, it seems like there's been a lot of it, or some things in the media, probably not enough, but there's been some things in the media, how few Christians have come into this country, people coming in from Syria. You have any thoughts about why there's so few Christians that are being allowed in when thousands of Muslims are allowed?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think I'm surprised there's not more people asking that. And there could be an agenda that Obama just has a different worldview than most of the founding fathers, and maybe he doesn't like Christians. I don't know I don't think I can come up with an answer as to why. We just have to speculate. It is very bizarre that a lot of these Assyrian Christians in particular are not getting refuge here.
Yeah, because it seems like they're the ones that we hear about being persecuted over there. And I wanted to talk with you also about your idea of maybe a second Israel. One of the things that Joe Biden said that I could maybe agree with is that maybe Iraq should have been divided into 3 sectors, and one of those sectors being a Kurdish area. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think Joe Biden was right on that one?
Well, I think almost right. I think he was talking about different countries, and when I was there and I talked to the President Barzani and his son Nurchevan, their thought was there should have been 4 regions, one for the Kurds, one for the Sunnis, and then the Shiites had two areas, one for the religious sites and one for the oil zones. So but what they prefer, they told me, if we went to an independent, autonomous country, we would be beholden to Tehran or Baghdad or somebody for a port because we'd be landlocked.
Right.
So what they preferred is having a highly autonomous area, sort of a federalism, we might call it. So, but they were really getting a bad deal because the oil revenues would be shipped to Baghdad. And the Kurds are supposed to get 17% of that. But the Baghdad central government would put all kinds of fees on that, and then also they would pay the 17% on old oil prices and never adjusted to the new prices, which had time have been higher. Now they're, of course, lower. And so as a result, there's a real budgetary crisis and a real economic crisis in the Kurdistan region because they just weren't getting the revenues. And I think what they've done is started trying to sell oil directly on the market. There's a big lawsuit of a tanker in New Orleans that sat there over the lawsuit that they tried to sell in the market, and it went back and forth. I don't know how it eventually got resolved, but the central government has never really treated the Kurdish region with a fairness at all.
Foster, educate me a little bit. Is there oil production in the Kurdish areas?
Oh, huge! Yes, huge. It's very, very significant.
So that would be one reason why Iraq wouldn't particularly favor this kind of a deal, would it?
Well, apparently it's 17% of the population and that's what percentage they're supposed to get of the country's Iraq's oil revenues, but they're not getting it. So I think that oil issue probably is important, but it's just the whole idea that they don't want to fragment Iraq. I sat next to the fellow named Brett McGurk, who's responsible for the Iraq policy, at a dinner that I had in Washington with the ambassador to Iraq from America, and with President Barzani and Senators McCain and Cornyn and Ross Perot Jr., who has interest in Kurdistan, and then 4 or 5 top aides to the Kurds. And the whole discussion with McGurk was, we have to hang on to this one Iraq policy. We can't allow it to fragment. Most people think that that's a complete fiction, and there really isn't one Iraq. And when I was there, Bremer was in charge and would not allow the Kurds to have their own flag, and he didn't allow them to have a barrier to a checkpoint to coming through. And there's a lot of bad guys coming across the lines, and they finally agreed to allow the Kurds to develop their own security. And there was never a single U.S. American troop lost in combat on the Kurdish region.
Foster, I got to ask you, when you say that you have visited these areas in the Kurdish region, is it, I know you're a man of means and influence, but is it difficult for you to get there? Would it be difficult for me to get there?
Well, it is a little risky. I mean, the first time I went, I had presidential security from the Kurdish government with a SUV in front and an SUV behind my SUV with machine guns. And this time when I went, I was with a friend who is a former military guy there, and he has a little security company. So we only had one SUV, but we had an AK-47 in the front seat and an AK-47 behind me, and a pistol on the seat between us. So that's mainly the issue, is people, don't sometimes want to take the risk of doing that. But I basically just bought myself a ticket to Vienna and a ticket to Erbil, and I got off the plane, and it went just fine.
Okay. Foster, when I was watching the last debate, and Hillary started talking about a no-fly zone, I wanted to jump out of my seat, but I'm thinking, okay, what do you do when the Russians violate that no-fly zone? Are you going to shoot at the Russian planes? Are they going to shoot back? Or is this going to lead to some sort of a war between Russia and the United States? Hey, was I thinking too outside the box on that one?
Well, I think the thought process is, if we had more of a powerful military, the Russians wouldn't dare violate our zone. But I think the fact that question can come up illustrates the damage that the left has done to our military. They've placed a lot of our best generals, and we're back down to World War I levels with the Navy, I guess. And you've heard all the rhetoric as to how do we get our military built up. So that's why it's important to have a strong military, in order that no one's going to violate the zone. But whether or not we would shoot a plane down or not, I think is I don't think that would happen if it was kind of antagonistically flying through the zone. But if it dropped any bombs and injured anybody, I think that could wind up with an escalation for sure.
Foster, you have any more time with us? How you fix for time?
Oh, I'm fixed for fine. I'm just fine. I'm back from a 10-day trip to Italy and Spain, and I've been traveling for 39 hours with 4 hours sleep. So I can even articulate. I'm feeling pretty peppy here.
Well, I appreciate that. On your website, fosterfreeze.com, you talk about what affects you most candidates' behavior of his or policies. And you have on here a policy statement from the Faith and Freedom Coalition comparing Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. And wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think this has probably been the greatest contrast we've ever had in the Democratic platform and the Republican platform. John Barrasso is our senator in Wyoming, where I live most of the year, and he did a wonderful job of putting what most people say one of the most God-fearing, honoring platforms. And the contrast is quite remarkable. Let's just talk about the whole idea of religious freedom. Trump wants to repeal the Johnson Amendment, which was put in by President Johnson to disallow pastors to talk about politics. I mean, the colloquialism is that the black churches certainly don't honor that whatsoever, but there's a lot of fear among some pastors that if they talk about politics, they can lose their tax exemption. There's about 600 churches that have boldly said, you can take away our letter, but you can't take away our tax exemption. So, number one, he wants to get rid of this Johnson Amendment so no pastor has to worry about being harassed by the IRS for what they say. And in contrast to that, Hillary Clinton wants to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits taxpayers from paying for abortions. Hillary Clinton has publicly stated that Christians have to change their beliefs. At the World Women's Summit in 2015 in April, she basically said these deep religious codes and behaviors have to be changed as she's trying to promote the abortion industry. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very strong contrast. And under Donald Trump policy, I don't think you would ever see the Little Sisters of the Poor being forced to pass out abortion pills. So that contrast is very different. In fact, she even, I believe, does not oppose the atrocious partial birth abortion practice, which is almost hideous to talk about, much less describe, where the baby is pulled out except for the head, and then I don't even want to talk about it. But I think about 95%, 98 of the senators voted against such a procedure, and the fact that she still embraces that is pretty amazing. Recently, her top aides through this WikiLeaks talked about a Catholic Spring, much like an Arab Spring, and the head of one of the networks, Catholic networks, didn't take well to that and said, I don't like the idea that someone's going to create some organizations to kind of subvert the Catholic teachings and to promote a political agenda, and I don't think that's going to go down very well, is kind of what he paraphrased said. So I think the fact that they are kind of the Hillary approach is taking that on religious freedom and talks about freedom of worship. Well, in Romania, under the Soviet era, they had freedom of worship, which means go to any church you want. But you better not be caught on the public bus reading your Bible or you be in real trouble. The public freedom of worship and freedom of religion are two different things. And when you think about it, how is it possible we wound up on college campus with free speech zones? I would have thought every square inch of America is a free speech zone, and it implies that if there's a free speech zone on a campus, then part of the campus must not be a free speech zone. So we've got a lot of contrast there. And then, of course, the one I mentioned earlier on health care. She's very eager to double down on the government takeover of health care. And Zeke Emanuel, who's the architect of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, has been reported on television saying the way they're going to deal with it is raise the fine, because the younger people were not buying the policies and they just paid a small fine. Well, now they think if they raise the fine, they'll be forcing them to buy insurance. So the announcement today by Donald Trump is he wants to stress health savings accounts, be able to have insurance companies sell all across state lines, be able to choose your doctor, and go back to a system which honors why we have the greatest healthcare system in the world.
Right. Yep. As you mentioned, I remember when the Shah of Iran flew into the United States to have, a heart operation or whatever, and no one's going to the Indian reservations that the government runs. What you talked about, Foster, on the Kurds is really interesting to me, where they can't even afford night goggles. And during the Nicaraguan Contra Sandinista, battle, Americans actually contributed money to the Contras. I was one of them. Is there anything like that going on now to support the Kurds, where non-governmental sources are helping them?
Well, there's some non-governmental humanitarian aid. I went over and gave, I had like 5,000 blankets that I passed out, but that didn't. That doesn't involve arms or armaments. I think you have to be very careful in doing that, because I think that's where Ollie North got into a lot of trouble. So anybody that is doing it, I think, is doing it quite surreptitiously. I know when I was there was some concern because the Germans sent in the Milan anti-tank weapon and spread it through some of the battalions, and the Obama administration got very upset because they went direct rather than going through the central Baghdad government. And at this meeting I referred to earlier, the ambassador to Iraq turned to President Barzani and said, "We're very grateful that we've been able to partner with you and just sent you 25 mine-resistance, ambush-protected personnel vehicles called MRAPs." And I got and said, "Sir, you might be proud of it, but I'm actually embarrassed because the central government got 250 of those MRAPs, and why the Kurds, who are the most effective fighting force, only got 25 out of that 250, I think is somewhat of an outrage." So the Kurds still need our encouragement.
Yeah, actually, that's something I noticed about you. I met you 2 years ago at CPAC. I don't know if you'd remember it. What I noticed about you is you're a great encourager. I remember Larry Klayman came up to you and sort of thought you probably didn't know who he was, and when you found out he was Larry Klayman, you treated him like a conquering hero. So that's something actually I noticed more about you than anything else. On the Kurdish thing, they are Muslims, and yet they tolerate the Christians, unlike the rest of the Muslims in that part of the world. Why do you think that is? Is it out of self-interest, or?
Well, I think when you look at Christianity, you can find people all the way who handle snakes and speak in tongues, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, who might show up at Easter and Christmas if their wives make them come. So also in Islam you have that gradation. I was honored to be at the head table with Abdurrahman Wahid, the first democratically elected president of Indonesia, and he received an award from the Simon Wiesenthal Foundation in Los Angeles, which is the largest Jewish entity of significance in Los Angeles, for protecting Christians. And I think if you look at the current trend, the Kurds the Muslims in Kurdistan are Sunnis primarily, but yet you probably have 500 who left to join the ISIS forces. So when you look at the disparity we have in our country between Democrats and Republicans and the whole spectrum we have politically and spiritually, you have that same phenomena in any country, and in Kurdistan it's primarily less fundamentalist. And you have these terms, moderate Muslims and radicalized Muslims, and all those terms probably don't hit the mark. I think it's better maybe we talk to fundamentalist Islam, because what al-Baghdadi is doing is trying to bring back what Muhammad did when he first started gaining his power. He would allow the caravans to be raided, and they'd share the booty between building Muhammad's power and the raiding tribes, and they got to keep the women as sex slaves, and so the develop of the Muslim power came pretty much through the sword, as Baghdadi is kind of demonstrating now. But having said that, there are a lot of Muslims who kind of have given up the notion of jihad and spreading Islam throughout the whole world. The term House of Islam refers to sort of submitting to Islam. So a lot of people told me a committed fundamentalist Muslim, when he talks about peace, he's talking about when the whole world is submitted to Islam. It's not when you have these various groups who get along together. And throughout history, there has been many times when the groups did get along. In fact, it's kind of a touching story. When the Jews were pushed out of Kurdistan, a lot of their Muslim neighbors continued to clean out their synagogues. They'd sweep them and maintain them. So I think it's like you can't say a Christian is this. Well, I've met Christians who have no relationship with Jesus in their day-to-day lives. It's kind of like it's a one-a-day week thing instead of being the kind of the Sunday is the time in the locker room to figure out how do you get inspired to spend the rest of the week properly.
Foster Frieds, we want to thank you so much for joining us, and I know you've had a full day. As you said, you've been traveling for the last 39 hours, had about 4 hours sleep. I saw you this morning on CNN. I know you had a long day, But one good thing, you're in one of the most beautiful places in the world. I mean, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, looking out to the west to the Grand Teton Mountains. What a beautiful place.
Yeah, did I look like I was awake this morning on CNN?
Yes, you did. You look very good. You know? One last quick question, if I could.
Sure.
What, in your opinion, why are the Kurds such great fighters? Because, I heard stories how when attacked, the Iraqi army dropped their arms and ran away. You know, they did it during our war with Iraq. They did it in face of of ISIS. But the Kurds, they will stand and fight. What makes them different?
Well, I don't know. I suppose you can ask, why are the French great cooks? Maybe.
Just in their blood.
It's something built into them. And what was really neat when I went to Camp Black Tiger, to see a lot of these guys were coming out of retirement. They're in their 30s and 40s. And Sirwan Barzani, as a wealthy, probably a billionaire with telecommunications, a whole bunch of interests, he came out to be the commander, and he would review the troops, and he'd say, look, you guys can fight here to try to save your country, or you can wind up living out your life at age 75 in a refugee camp, and decide what it is you want to be. And the Peshmerga have this wonderful spirit, and they're motivated. But how motivated would you and I be? How motivated would you and I be if the ISIS troops were 35 miles from your front door?
I'd be pretty motivated.
And that's what the people in the Erbil are facing. And a lot of the when I was there in August a while back, a lot of them were even thinking of leaving when the movement was in favor of ISIS. Now we're kind of making good progress of pushing them back, but it's not going to end until we kind of reduce the whole caliphate of the land that they control. And some of the terms, getting back to that, we have to use a term, global jihad movement. Mm-hmm. That's like a river sweeping over the globe, and all these other ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Al-Houthi, Hamas, they're just tributaries. Now, there's rivalry certainly between them, but at the same time, they all are unified to try to get rid of the great Satan and the little Satan. And so we have to keep that in mind. If we defeat ISIS, there's going to be another brand the next day. It's like Ben and Jerry's ice cream. They're just a new variety.
Foster Freeze, again, we want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. You're always so generous with your time. Could you tell our audience how they could follow your work?
Well, probably the best way is just subscribe to my website, which is my name, www.fosterfreeze.com. And I tell people a good way to remember that is picture a bottle of Foster's beer sitting next to a plate of French fries, and then add an S. So my last name is spelled F-R-I-E-S-S. So fosterfreeze.com, and I've got some efforts there to left, right, forward march, which is also embedded in that website, where we're trying to unite Americans of opposing political views to efforts they both embrace. So, for example, we have Sheila Jackson Lee, one of the most liberal congresswomen from Houston, on the same stage promoting school choice with Ted Cruz. And also Laura Ingraham, everyone knows, is a conservative talk show host. Most people know she has 3 adopted children, so we have her paired with former liberal Senator Mary Landrieu from Louisiana, who headed up the 141-member adoption caucus in the Senate and the House. And the two of them worked together to try to restore international adoptions, which have plummeted more than half in the last 5 years. So the more we can find people that we agree with, in fact, Van Jones and Geraldo Rivera, they both are willing and eager to arm the Kurds. So we need to get our country back together again. We've never been more divisive in my entire lifetime. You have blacks against whites, you have gays against straights, you have poor against rich, you have citizens against their police, we have women against men, and I think we all have to work for a return to civility by encouraging more civility in our political discourse and our love for one another.
Oh boy, I totally agree with you on that. In fact, I've mentioned those same exact things here on the Conservative Commandos, how divided we are. Foster Freeze, again, thank you so much. Take care. God bless.
Up to good work. Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
Pleasure talking with you.
Bye-bye.
Dana, I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. It was a great first show together, Dana. And I also want to thank our guest, Fred Lucas, White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, our most recent guest, Foster Fries, businessman, supporter of conservative Christian causes, humanitarian. I want to thank Mr. John Forsyth Jr. for working the boards. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Hear real facts on social and political issues, then stop listening now. Otherwise, stay right here for real issues, real facts with real people.
Accelerate your culturalization of America.